Good morning and welcome to the March 15th edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Short News. We're live from here in sunny North Florida, but I'm in my office. And today I want to talk about Brexit, because we've got a lot to talk about with Brexit. We have some surprising news on Brexit, actually good surprising news. So you guys know that I've been following this very, very closely. And what I saw yesterday after watching over 3 hours of British Parliament was fascinating. I was out the door for a little while. I watched Parliament for hours yesterday and then had to leave and go do some things. And I saw the final version of the vote and the final vote totals on Zero Hedge after dinner. And I was like, that surprised me. So before we go any further with that, let's do a little housekeeping. Remember that tomorrow night at 8:30, we'll do this for about an hour or so. I do my normal everyday live streams along with Monday nights at 8 p.m. as well. You're all more than welcome to join me. And you can follow my work over at tomluongo.me as well as at moneyandmarkets.com, usually on Fridays or Saturdays, and at Strategic Culture Foundation as well. So let's do the Twitter thing as well. You got TFL1728, and of course, give a like and subscribe down below if you really like what you have today, or click the notification button for every time I do one of these and go live. All right, let us talk about Brexit, and it's good to see that the Periscope is working again, apparently, because I'm even getting, not only am I getting both Periscope feed, but I'm getting Periscope comments for the first time in a couple of months. Something was wrong with my Periscope account. Who the hell knows? It's Twitter. What do we expect? All right, let's get right into it, because we're almost 2 minutes into this and I haven't actually done anything. So yesterday, the British Parliament held what was supposed to be the most lopsided vote in all of these votes surrounding Brexit, and that was whether or not to take no deal Brexit off the table, right? And that was the big one, right? Because that sets up today's vote, where they're going to sit down and discuss, which they're doing right now, as a matter of fact. And I watched for over 2 hours this morning, whether they're going to ask for an application for an extension to Article 50. But what's important about yesterday's vote was the following. I watched over 3 hours of British Parliament yesterday, and everybody who stood up on the Remain side, everyone, was expecting the vote to come down in a very lopsided way, that there was no support whatsoever within the House of Commons for a no-deal Brexit. All the Remainers, all the Tories, all the independent group, all the Lib Dems, the Scots, all of them, all expected for no deal to fail, to be taken off the table by 500 or 550 votes. So it was supposed to fail by a tremendous margin. It failed by 4. Which means that Theresa May whipped the Tories to keep no deal on the table. And at the end of the day, it is the Tory defectors to the independent group, and there were 4 of them, who ultimately scuttled this deal, that ultimately got this past 312 to 308, but it was not supposed to be that close, which says that there's really not a majority of Parliament that doesn't want to leave on no deal terms. It's a very thin majority. It's a majority, but it's a very thin majority. And at this point, it doesn't send a clear signal to the EU that the Brits are going to negotiate or come off of any of their negotiation stances if they ask for an extension. It also means that Theresa May just snookered everybody. Now, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Okay, I don't know if she's doing this so that she can bring her deal up for a 3rd vote. Okay, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that that vote was not supposed to be that close, and she whipped a near victory for keeping no deal on the table. Now, what's interesting this morning is I'm now getting Periscope comments, but not YouTube comments. Now I have to have both of them open at the same time, and I got to try and deal with all of it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so that's the situation. And this means that Labour's going to sink in the polls. They're already 9 points behind the Tories, because now all of them have been revealed as traitors, that they're not willing to honor the vote, honor Article 50, honor the original referendum, honor their own pledge at the end of the day to hold to a government that would take us out on whatever terms necessary. And it was actually a very, very choice piece of political kit, what she did. The latest polls that I've seen I was watching Nigel Farage's show last night, fully 55% of Brits are willing to go with either WTO or Article 24 is preferable to any other scenario, meaning there's just not a popular mandate for a second referendum, which is what the EU is going to try and ask for as a condition for an Article 50 extension, or that at this point, if May goes, what's the one I'm trying to say? If the extension passes, there's a very good chance there may be a general election between now and June. And then what happens? Labour gets crushed. The SNP might even get crushed. And then there's a clear majority in the House to take the Brits out on WTO or GATT 24 terms, because especially if there's no extension, forget it. It's over. It's either at the last minute they put Theresa May's deal on the table for a third time and go no deal, and knowing that there's not much of a majority at this point for quote unquote a no deal, a catastrophic no deal. So it's actually really quite interesting. It's actually, and this is why all the odds makers have now raised the odds of a no deal Brexit being more possible than it was previously, because an extension solves nothing. But it may then put even more pressure on the European Union to cut a deal, because they don't want, and I'm about to show you something very interesting, they don't want Nigel Farage to show up after they don't want Nigel Farage on that floor after June 30th. That's it. They don't want him, and they don't want him and some massive number of Brexiteers and Eurosceptics to show up in Parliament, in European Parliament, and start scuttling the works. Because I'm about to show you some seat projection stuff. This is why May whipped for the Tories yesterday. Whipped for keeping no deal on the table. It was, one, good for the Tories, because now they get to say, look, we tried to honor the deal as best we could. We tried to honor your will as best we could, but Labour stopped us. But these traitors stopped us. So all those people are all going to get voted out of office. Like I said, incredible piece of domestic political kit, because it may be the only way, which is to go then to a snap election scenario at some point in the future in order to save Brexit. Because no situation in Parliament right now is better for the EU and for the British elite and for the Remainers than it is right now. It's the same situation that Five Star finds itself in Italy, right? Five Star has greater proportional representation in Italian parliament than the Poles are. So every time Five Star tries to step out of line, Matteo Salvini can just hold snap elections over their heads, take his 36% majority, and form a government with Forza Italia or the Brotherhood of Italy, and get a clear majority of a center-right government that then goes after the EU and cuts Five Star out of the mix completely. Okay, so that's the potential for everybody here. That's why the ERG group is actually in the driver's seat right now. It doesn't look like it, but it actually is. It's good, because here's the situation, and I'm going to show you the latest seat projections that I get. There's a great site called polls.eu no, I want to switch to that. So how do I switch to that? Change to that source. Did I do this wrong? Now I can't switch them. That's really frustrating. That's not what I want to do. Okay, I can't show them to you. Okay, so the basic projection is as follows. As of right now, Eurosceptic parties are polling upwards of 31% of parliament. 705 seats, around 31%. maybe a few more, maybe a few less, but depending on how the minor parties shake out and whether or not some other people leave the European People's Party. But as right now, taking Hungary out of the European People's Party, which is a near certainty at this point, 31% of will see there will be a 31% seating in European Parliament as of right now, with the 705 seat Parliament that would be in effect if the Brits leave. The Brits don't leave. The Brits are going to get 73 seats. And given this fiasco and given the hardening of the British people against their own government and against the EU, and we know what happened in 2014, UKIP won the election. Do you think they're not going? Do you think that the British people aren't going to send 60 Eurosceptics out of 73? It's very possible. It may only be 50. It doesn't matter. Now we're talking 35 or 36 or 37%. And that's enough to change the complexion completely of European Parliament, especially if there's any further movement in any of the other national polls. That the Eurosceptic front in the European Parliament, if the Brits stay in, could be as much as 40%. That's insane. And that's what Guy Verhofstadt and Juncker and the rest of them, they're all terrified of this. The only one who's come out in favor of a long extension is Donald Tusk. But again, that means then that the Brits have to stand for European parliamentary elections. They're going to be in there, and there's a very good chance that legally, even if the Brits leave the EU, that those 73 MEPs will be there for the entire term, because there's no mechanisms within the EU. Apparently, there's no mechanisms within the EU structure to kick them out, except for possibly because they can't even invoke Article 7. Their representation's gone, but there's no way. It's all becomes a mess, and they then can disrupt actually EU parliamentary procedure and pay back Italy for example, in some way. So all of this gets really interesting. If the Tories, by standing firm and by Theresa May whipping in order to get her deal passed, but in order to do this, it opens up the possibility that even if they get the extension to June 29th, and they say, well, we have to have a second referendum, they can renege on that. I know, and so I'm seeing the comments that are coming through again, and I know you guys are as skeptical about all this as I am. Stoyanovich says, look, the EU will bend any and every rule to keep the Brits in the EU. I know this. I know that they're already, even by doing what they're doing, by saying we would accept an extension to June 29th, even that extension is technically illegal. Because the German Attorney General or legal counsel advised Angela Merkel and the EU that any extension beyond April 13th would actually be illegal because of European parliamentary elections. So disrupting European parliamentary procedure does what exactly? The first thing it does is it says there's a very distinct possibility that a Eurosceptic European Commission president could be elected. That's the first thing. And that would change everything. That would then improve Italy's chance of getting changes and rule changes to the fiscal compact, changes to how the banking system is dealt with, how the European Central Bank does its thing. It will probably lead to a lessening of, what I mean is a loosening of those rules, because the biggest problem here, and we're seeing it across Europe, it is as follows. It is that the Lisbon Treaty that everybody voted for, even if it took 2 or 3 votes to get them in there, did not vote for political and fiscal union. They did not vote to give up their sovereignty. They voted for customs union. They voted for single market. And that's what they wanted. They didn't want a political union. And they've been trying to backdoor the political and fiscal union through legislation and through the squashing and through the continual rules changes within the EU to turn it into a bureaucratic nightmare that makes it impossible for anybody to get out of this while they move forward with a fiscal and political union that no one wants. And that's where the rise of Euroscepticism actually is coming from. So yeah, it is very possible. Brett Harris is asking, it's very possible that this would change the dynamics of European politics completely. Moreover, the markets are going to respond to this in a way that is, well, bearish, is putting it mildly. And that's the other important part in this, is that at the end of the day, you have to realize that the reason the EU is being so intransigent on this, is being so hardline on this, is that they know that if they give up any control to the Brits whatsoever, if they give in an inch, that Italy is going to be standing over their shoulder looking at what's going on. Hungary is going to be looking over their shoulders going, what's going on? And the markets are all going to lose their minds. Because at that point, there will not be political unity within the EU. And therefore, the currency itself is now at risk. And all of the debt that's issued in that currency would be at risk. That's what this is about. It is at the end of the day, this is all about trying to save a sovereign debt crisis and the euro while also saving the political and fiscal union and everything else. This is incredibly important. And whether Theresa May folded whether she just betrayed her paymasters in Brussels and City of London or not by whipping for this, I don't know. I don't think so. That would be too much to ask for. But it does not put everybody, it does create an opportunity here for, it creates an opportunity that even during the extension period, there's a way out of this, because British popular opinion is what's causing this to fail. Okay? It's what's causing this. This deal was supposed to have been done and dusted back in December, and everybody was supposed to be on board, was supposed to just go along with the pantomime that, well, we're leaving, but we're not really leaving. And that's what the European Union wants. They want every country that is not on board with their version of globalism, neoliberalism, and frankly, communism. Because it's actually worse than the U.S. The structure of the EU is actually worse than the USSR. And so what they were trying to do is trying to strip voting rights, but while keeping everybody in. They want to keep Britain in, but strip them of their voting rights. Dictate to them how they're going to be governed, but don't give them a say if they're going to be recalcitrant. So the same reason that they've opened up Article 7 procedures against Poland and Hungary over humanitarian reasons. It's the reason why Bill Browder has been able to get MPs to try and start Article 7 proceedings against Cyprus for allowing the Russians to do investigations into their own banking system. Kevin Peters says the House of Commons is embarrassing the British into a laughingstock as the deal. No deal isn't, because a no deal is no deal is incomprehensible to the world, and it's unbelievable why this is happening the way it's happening. So yeah, it is a sad joke. I don't know that I'm right about all of this, but I think I'm close. So watch how this plays here. At the end of the day, the Remainers and the independent group just slit their political throats. People like Chuck Amuna and Anna Soubry are now joker figures. They know they're not going to get reelected, and they've been promised. You can see it in Parliament when they ask about things like, well, let's get legislation on the table before we even get an extension from the EU that we're going to commit to a second referendum. Let's get all that done. Why? Because that's what they're being paid to do. They know that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for them if they scuttle Brexit, and they don't give a shit at this point whether or not they are reelected or not. They're trying to burn it all down. They're trying to literally burn down British sovereignty while speaking in the name of the people. And it's terrible, and it's vile, and you can see it on their faces. That's why I've spent hours watching British Parliament to get a tenor of these people, to get a sense of who they are. And frankly, they're all terrible. Except for the ERG, except for the Bruges Group, except for the hardcore Brexiteers. They get it. They understand what this is about, and they're the only ones. And they're the ones who are going to be in power after whatever general election comes next, whether it's a snap election sometime later this year or in 2022. So no matter what happens here, I'm telling you, no matter what happens here, the EU, Britain and the EU will be done by 2022. By the time of the next general election, Nigel Farage could wind up being prime minister of this country. And if not him, then someone even more radical than him. So, Tillman asked me one last question, and I'm going to go because I don't like to go on this long. We're now 20 minutes, which is, what is Russia and China's view of Brexit? Officially, they don't have one. The Putin would never comment on the internal policies of another country, never. But you bring up Russia, and one of the main things that's going on behind the scenes, that some of the real arm twisting is coming from the Americans and the EU. Because remember, if they leave on WTO terms, they're no longer part of the EU. And therefore, sanctions against Russia lift. And the Brits are free to trade with the Russians. That changes everything. And that is anathema to the British deep state. That opens up so many powerful people to inquiry as to what's going on. Because, again, a Eurosceptic leadership, the Tory party, or some other version of that, Brexit, the Brexit party or whatever, that would, and very well could, break open all of the corruption surrounding the Steele dossier, MI6, interference in U.S. elections, interference in 90s Russia, all of that stuff. All of that corruption could all be exposed, and that's why they're scared to death. And let me tell you, whatever reasoning May had yesterday for whipping to stop no deal, it may have just opened up the biggest can of worms and biggest set of unintended consequences everybody wasn't expecting. I may be wrong, but let's watch it play out, because the bigger picture here is that people have had it with unelected bureaucrats and unrepresentative government. They've had it. And when people lose everything, and most of the people in the hinterlands of England feel like they've lost everything, they lose it. Right? All right. This is what I got for today, guys. If you like what you heard today, please give a like and subscribe down below. Please share this with everyone that you can. Let's get this one spread far and wide. This one's important, really important. So that'd be great. I appreciate everybody stopping by. I'm glad that I've got everything worked out. I've got Periscope and YouTube comments again. Oh my God. Jubilee celebration. You guys, you'd be great. You have a great afternoon. We'll talk tomorrow night at 8 p.m. 8:30 p.m. I may be on tomorrow morning. We'll see. Depends on my schedule. All right, you guys take care. You have a great day. Keep your stick on the ice.